Hi, Todd here. I had a question come in that I'm going to work up for you as a sample case. And the question was, they've got a client who's buying an investment property and they're trying to figure out how much to put down. Should they put down 10% or 20% or 25%? They also want to know what would be the financial impact under these scenarios of, say, applying the extra cash or cash flow that's coming from different, like if I put down 20%, I'm going to have more cash flow than if I put down 10. So if I want to put that extra money back towards the mortgage, what would that do and what would that look like? And if I wanted to say put that extra cash flow into a savings account, what would that look like? And can I do that with your software? And the answer is absolutely. That's really what the software is designed to do, specifically what you're talking about. So let me show you how to set this up. We don't need to put any current liabilities in because what they want to do is look at buying a totally new property. So I just set this up as a purchase. The contract price I'm using is $200,000, and the title for this is 10% down, 20% down, and 25% down, because that's what the loan officer wanted to compare for his client. We have a 90% LTV that would give us 180, an 80% LTV that would give us 160, and a 75 would get us borrowing 150. I'm using a 4.5 rate. It would probably be a little higher. And obviously with this one, we're going to have MI. So we're going to want to put our MI payment in over here. You'll notice that's why you got a big jump here, 1374 versus 1077 versus 1026. So one of the things I recommend as a tip is I like to always put my highest payment on the left-hand side. That way all the numbers show as positive because we're comparing this to the others. So if you're doing a 10% or 20% or 25% down, put the smallest down payment first. That way when you're looking at your payments, you're going to see the savings going across getting higher. The other alternative would be if you're going to say do a 15 versus a 30, etc., versus an ARM, I put the 15 on the far left, then the 30, then the ARM. That way you're seeing your payments get smaller and the savings going across. Now, what I've done here is really simple, right? I've just set up a 10, a 20, and a 25% down. The first question is closing costs, right? So it's going to, at 10% down, I put in a 1% origination and say a 1732 closing costs. My closing costs are pretty much the same. They're a little different. Why are they a little different? Because 1% on 150,000 is less than 1% on 180,000. So I can see a slight difference here in my closing costs. Now this shows me my cash needed to close in each situation. To be fair though, I need to equalize these variables. So I need to show that if they have 53,232 available to buy a house with 25% down, then for cash available, I want to put 53,232, 53,232, and 53,232. All right. One of the things I keep seeing, and this is just maybe it's old habit, but people are not comparing apples to apples. They're comparing apples to oranges to giraffes. Meaning if I go through and put in the cash to close as 43,332 here and this one, right, instead of putting this, then it looks like I'm putting the same amount of money down when in reality, sorry, I had to grab something. If I'm putting 43,232 as my cash available here, then my net cash at closing is off by $100. I'm sorry, that's because I put the wrong number here. 43,332. So is that really fair? No, because in this situation I'm putting down 53,000. Here I'm putting down 43. That means my cash at closing is 0 and 0. But I brought an extra 10,000 to closing. So you want to always use the same number whenever it makes sense in the cash available, because now what I can see is if I only put 10% down, I'm going to have 29,700 left over, all things being equal. If I put 20% down, I'm going to have 9,900 left over, and if I put 25 down, I'm going to have no money left over at closing. Now I'm doing a nice job of showing the financial impact at closing. That's the first thing. Second thing I want to do is show the cash impact. If I only put 10% down, my pre-tax payment is going to be $1,374 per month. Okay, and I use pre-tax on investment properties because they're treated differently from a financial standpoint. You have depreciation, so I tend to use pre-tax for this scenario. On a 20% down, it's only $1,077. I have a bigger down payment, I have no MI, and at 25% down, my payment is $1,026. So notice what I mean by having the biggest payment on the left and the payments getting smaller as they go across. It's nice because I can show payment difference here is 0. Why is it 0? Because this is my base payment. Now I'm comparing 1077 to 1374, and it's telling me my payment's going to be $297 more per month here. And here my payment's going to be 1026, so it's going to be $348 less than here. So I can already see the difference here that this is making. With 25% down, I'm getting an extra $348 a month in cash flow. But I had to pay for that. I had to put $53,000 down. Here I didn't have to put down $53,000. I only had to put $23,000 down, but I'm having to pay an extra $348 a month here compared to here. Now that's the easy part. And again, for many people, that may be what you want to do. You shrink this up and you just show the cash and the cash flow difference at closing. But you and I both know that if you saw this, your next question would be, well, what's the best thing for me financially over time? And that's where the annual wealth impact comes in. And this particular loan officer said, I want to be able to compare over some period of time what this looks like for my client. I want to compare it to have them take this extra money that's available and go put it into a savings account. So you have to know, what is the time frame? I put in 15 years as the hold period. What's the property appreciation rate for this property? 2.5%. What's the savings rate on the money that they would earn in the savings account? 5%. Notice something else I did. With the adjusted net payment, again, this is just like in the closing costs. The payment is $1,374. Okay? I can override that by putting in a fixed monthly payment, but I'm no longer comparing apples to apples. I'm comparing apples to oranges to tangerines. Because now I'm spending $1,374 a month in this scenario, $1,077 a month in this scenario, and $1,026 a month in this scenario. I recommend you use the fixed monthly payment when you want to override this, but you still typically would want to keep this the same. For example, if I'm comparing from a wealth standpoint, maybe the client says, I want to spend $1,500 a month on each property, and that's the amount that I'm willing to spend. So I put in $1,500, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in $1,500. So now I'm overriding the $1,374 and saying I want it to be $1,500. Now again, I could use $1,374, $1,077, and $1,026. That will still do the accurate math analysis for me, but it doesn't do an accurate logic analysis because I'm now comparing totally different payments in each scenario. Now the other thing I want to do is the client is going to rent this property for $1,500 a month. So this is kind of cool. I can say I'm going to pay $1,500 a month on each property, and I'm going to rent the property for $1,500 a month. By putting that in, what it's going to do is it's actually going to show me making a $1,500 payment and getting a rental credit of $1,500 a month, and I can go through and look at these side by side. This is going to go through and do over 15 years an analysis that says, well, your house value is going to be the same in all three situations. In this scenario, after 15 years, you'll owe $119 versus $105 versus $99. This is how much you'd have in savings and interest because he's interested in saving. So this is showing all the extra cash and cash flow going into a savings account, earning a 5% return. 122, 134, 126. So I can see my equity difference. And I can see the equity at the end of 15 years is higher on the 20 and the 25%. And that makes sense, right? Because here I had to pay more money out on mortgage insurance because I only put 10% down. I can see my net payments out of pocket were $49,700, $49, and $50. They're really the same because my payments were just the amount of money I put out of pocket at the closing table. Because my net cost is the same here, right? I'm spending $1,500, but I'm getting $1,500, so my payments are really going to wash themselves out. So for this client, if their goal is to save as much as possible, which is better for them? And you would think it'd be, gosh, the 25%, but nope, the math actually bears out. The 20% is the most efficient down payment for this client. It's going to give them the most savings over time. The extra 5% doesn't save them any more money. It costs them money. Why is that? Well, I can drill down for you. They're paying 4.5%, right? That's what they're paying for their interest. They're earning 5%. That means they're earning an extra 0.5% on the money over 15 years. So if they put down the extra 5% in the house, they're earning 4.5% on it. If they don't and they only put 20% down, that extra 5% goes into a savings account earning 5. So that extra 0.5% over 15 years is going to create for them some additional wealth. Not a lot, but about $6,000 over time. So that's kind of cool, right? You can see the difference. If I said my after-tax return rate was 4.5 and my mortgage rate was at 4.5, wouldn't we expect these to be about the same? And they'll be much closer. The wealth impact is 25,321 versus 25,417. So the wealth impact is about the same. But still, you've got some tax efficiencies and other things here that will create a little bit of a difference over time, and the software will bear that out. If I go out to 30 years, which is going to be the best option? They're almost exactly the same over 30 years. So this is really cool. I can go through and compare. Let's say that the client, this is another question he had, is what if they took the extra cash flow and applied that towards their mortgage? How fast could they pay it off? All right. If they go with a 10% down with the MI, it'd take them 184 months to pay off, all things being equal. But if they applied the extra cash flow to repaying the debt here, you'll notice they'd be debt-free in 163 months. So I've slid this out to 15 years. They're already debt-free. Their mortgage is paid off. And I could come back over here just a little bit and see that about this 13th year is the point where that mortgage liability gets paid off in full. And at that point, the rental income is going to be all positive. So a lot of really cool things you can do here, but I want to show you again that you can, for a client, help them figure out based on what they want to do. Let's say the client's goal was to have as much money to spend as possible. Well, and they're going to hold the house for 15 years. Well, again, from a spending standpoint, using this as the baseline, I got $29,700 at closing because that's left over. That's cash in pocket. And I get $40,000 in positive cash flow to spend over 15 years. With 20% down, I only have $9,900 left over at closing. But my cash flow difference is positive $76,000 over 15 years. With 25% down, I have no money at closing, but I have positive $85,000. So you can see it's kind of a wash, right? I mean, do I get the $85,000 out over time as cash flow? Do I pay it to myself? Because if I have $9,900 left over and $76,195 in cash flow, it's about $85,000. And if I go with this scenario, I have $30,000 at closing and $40,000 in cash flow. It's about $70,000. So I can see the difference here. That MI is costing me about $15,000 over that time period in wealth. But a lot of times you'll notice that they're not that big of a difference between one scenario and the next, but you can definitely compare them side by side. Hope this helps, and keep this in mind the next time you've got a client thinking about buying an investment property. You can easily go through and run through these different scenarios for them side by side.